Welcome to the last session of teleconference. In our previous two sessions, we discussed 3 cases which will help you for preparation for the term and practical examination. In this session, we will discuss about neonatal resuscitation. You must have already got the demonstration in the spell training, and you might have already practiced also. For your benefit and for recapitulating all the steps, we will have the demonstration here itself. We have all the 3 experts, Dr. Harish Chalani to my right, Dr. M.S. Prasad and Dr. Jagdish Chandra. We will be discussing few aspects of neonatal resuscitation, and there will be some demonstrations also. Please note, our next teleconference will be on the first Sunday of October, in which we will have discussion on MME 101. We will have 1 or 2 family presentations. So you can prepare yourself accordingly, and any doubt related to family presentation you can ask in those sessions. Today you can ask any question related to pediatrics, because this is the last teleconference related to pediatrics for your batch. Now, to start with, I will request Dr. Harish Chalani to tell us that what is the need of learning resuscitation.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jana. Friends, as you all know that infant mortality rate is still very high in our country, and 2/3 of the infant mortality rate is contributed by the neonatal mortality rate. Of the 5 million deaths which on an average occur every year all over the world, 1 million deaths are being contributed by the birth asphyxia, and the outcome of these babies can be significantly improved to more than 80% by learning the correct art of resuscitation. As you all know that the sepsis is the major cause of mortality, neonatal mortality. Second most important is the asphyxia. Now this asphyxia contributes to about 20%, as I said, so that means 1 million out of these 5 millions. So it's very important that we must learn the correct technique, and recently in the year 2005 December the guidelines have been revised, and these guidelines are more evidence based now, and anybody who is posted at any site where these deliveries are conducted or who they are taking up the deliveries, I think it's very important that they should learn the correct art of resuscitation, so that the outcome can be very good and morbidity can be reduced. So that's the basis of learning the various aspects, various skills of the resuscitation. Even the nursing personnel and the doctors who are all posted in the labor room, for example, they must know the correct art of the resuscitation.
I think you rightly pointed out that there is 1 million death due to birth asphyxia. I think neonatal resuscitation can play very important role in saving a lot of lives. Okay, then before delivery, what preparation will be required? Dr. Prasad, can you tell us?
Well, the preparation which we require depends on the setup where you are going to conduct this delivery. It may be in a primary health center, or it may be a tertiary center. In primary health centers, if you have got the facilities, first thing is the preparedness in the terms of the equipment and preparedness in terms of the skilled manpower. So anybody, any nursing person or a doctor can be a trained, skilled person for the neonatal resuscitation. So he should be readily available and not on call. Important point is that when a baby is born, the person who is going to take care of the baby should be physically present there. And second comes the preparedness in terms of the equipment and place. So a separate corner must be kept reserved for the baby, and that corner should be kept warm with the help of either radiant warmer, or if radiant warmer is not available, a 200 watt bulb can also be used to keep the place warm. And if electricity is not available there, keep the room warm with the help of some this coal operated angithi, what you call, but take care that once it is warm, take out that so that the smoke is not inside the room. The smoke should not be there. So that is the preparation of the room. Now preparation of the other things, like you must have some suction apparatus, or if you have got foot operated, electrically operated suction apparatus, that should be available. You should have this bag and mask available. Bag Dr. Chilani is showing, and there should be a mask. There are two sizes, one for the premature baby and one for the full-term baby. Those masks should be available. One corrugated tube should be available, and preferably oxygen supply should also be available. But if the oxygen supply is not available, at the ambient atmospheric air can also be used for this ventilation, bag and mask ventilation. Then if it is at district hospital and above that level, then this laryngoscope and endotracheal tube should also be available. Not only they should be available, but they should be functional. So whenever somebody is there attending for the baby, before the baby is delivered, he must check, as Dr. Chilani will be deliberating in detail, the functioning of these equipments, that this bag and mask ventilation, bag is working properly, mask is of proper size, this laryngoscope is working properly, battery is inside there, the bulb is lighting. These points must be kept in mind. Then of course the other care of the baby, like tying the umbilical cord and warm towels, this should also be available with the caretaker.
Yeah, I think very importantly Dr. Prasad has described that the important key message is that every equipment must be present and it should be in the functional order. And second important thing is that even in the low risk deliveries, the person should be available there, because it is previously guidelines were there that for low risk deliveries one may not be physically present there, one should be in the reach, easily available by telephone also. But now with the recent guidelines for all deliveries, because in 50% of the cases in low risk deliveries also the problem can come as a surprise. So physical presence is very important in the labor room to take care of the problems.
The slogan is that a high risk pregnancy may yield a normal baby, and if there is nothing abnormal, no risk, the baby can present with asphyxia.
Yes, yeah.
So both things are true.
Okay, once we are prepared that okay, we are ready to do the resuscitation, how will you assess the baby?
Yeah, so once the personnel has reached the labor room, they will see the obstetrician's record after seeing the functionality of the equipment, etc. Now once the baby is born, quickly we have to assess for the four important things. I mean, if we start first, let's see whether the liquor is clear or not, whether his liquor is clear or meconium stained. Secondly, quickly assess the gestation of the baby, whether the baby is term or preterm by looking at the genitalia. Then thirdly, whether the baby is breathing or not, whether the baby is having good respiratory effort, and lastly whether the baby is having good muscle tone or not. Previously we also used to take color also in that 5 assessment point. Now the color has been deleted in the recent guidelines. Assess on these 4 points. If everything is fine, like if the baby is breathing, the liquor is clear, the baby is term, and there is a good muscle tone, that means the baby will require just routine care. That routine care is just keep the baby dry, keep the baby next to the mother or onto the mother's abdomen in a skin to skin posture. So that's all which is required in the routine care. These babies, they do not require any other care apart from the drying and the initiating the breastfeeding as early as possible within half an hour or so. So that's the thing. If you find the baby is born where the liquor is meconium stained, or baby is preterm, or the baby is having a poor respiratory effort, the gasping respiration, or the baby is limp. In these cases, we provide the initial steps. Now let's see what are these initial steps. In the initial steps, we will bring the baby below the radiant warmer, which has been switched on 10 to 15 minutes before the anticipated delivery. The baby is brought in the pre-warmed sheets. As Dr. Prasad said, everything should be there. So we have the warm sheets available, and warm sheets, see, we can do it. I mean, once, as I said, the radiant warmer should be on, so you can keep few sheets there, and once the delivery has occurred, take these sheets with you and bring the baby in that pre-warmed sheets. After that, most important thing is make the position. Now position of the baby is made in a slight extension, like as I am showing you here. A roll of towel can be placed under the shoulder, and this is the slight extension position which you are seeing is the position. Can we just focus on this? The slight extension position. This is how we make the position of slight extension. Replacing the shoulder half to 3/4 of the inch below the shoulder. Now this will make the airway patent, right? And after this, once the airway is maintained, then if there are secretions are there, then we'll do the suctioning. Otherwise we'll not do it. And after that, if you feel, the baby has started taking the respiration, otherwise we'll start the principle of drying will be done. The next step of drying. So making the position, doing the suctioning, drying the baby, and still the baby has not cried, then we'll provide the tactile stimulation. Now please remember, the tactile stimulation is to be just giving the 2 flips or slapping the sole of the baby just twice. We discourage or keeping the back, the applying firm pressure on the back only twice. These are the ways by which do the tactile stimulation. We avoid doing the practices which previously they used to be done, holding the baby upside down and slapping the back, or bringing the thigh onto the chest. These are some of the techniques which are popular in some of the remote areas, which must be avoided. So having said that, the babies who are having any of the 4 assessed points, like where there is a meconium, the baby is preterm, these are the babies, they require the initial steps in the form of making the position, then suctioning and drying the baby, and tactile stimulation. The point which I want to highlight here is, immediately previously people, they used to do the drying actually. Now drying will stimulate the respiration. So whatever the secretions are there in the mouth, they will be aspirated. So in this case, what we do, first make the airway, then suctioning the mouth first, and then the nose, and then drying, and then finally tactile stimulation. So this way we will complete the initial steps in 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, I think it is coming very nicely. Dr. Jagdish, can you tell us what is the role of suction in case of resuscitation, especially when there is a meconium stand baby? How will you proceed about it?
As Dr. Harish was pointing out, that routine suctioning is not required if the child is breathing normally. If there are excessive secretions, then only suctioning is required. In cases when there is amniotic fluid is meconium stained, in those cases we have to see if the child is breathing vigorously. Again, the suction is not required, because whatever meconium was there in the airways, that would have been drawn inside the lungs. So there is no point doing the suction there. But if the child is limp, a meconium stained liquor, child born through a meconium stained liquor and is limp, in that case, for clearing the airways, suctioning would be required, and endotracheal intubation, through which again a suctioning would be required to be done.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Dr. Jagdish. The previous guidelines, they mentioned about the intrapartum suctioning. I think it was a routine that baby who is born out of meconium strain amniotic fluid, once the head is delivered, the suctioning of the oral passage used to be done. After that, people have now realized that this routine suctioning has got no basis, and you bring the baby, keep the baby under the radiant warmer, and as Dr. Jagdish has said, assess on the basis of whether the baby is vigorous or non-vigorous. If the baby is vigorous, then only provide the initial steps, and if non-vigorous, then do the tracheal suctioning and then followed by the initial steps.
Can you tell us what is the role of positive pressure ventilation?
Once we have done the initial steps for 30 seconds, that means we have maintained the positioning, we have drying the baby has been done, tactile stimulation has been done, 30 seconds have gone. Now still after that, if we find, then we make the assessment of the respiration, heart rate and color. So first most important we will see is the respiration. Now if the baby has not taken the breathing or the spontaneous respiration has not come, that's the time we should initiate the positive pressure ventilation. We should not waste time on the continued tactile stimulation. We should initiate as early as the positive pressure ventilation. Now to see how it is to be done, we must see our equipment should be in the functional order, and for positive pressure ventilation, this is the bag which we use. This is the silicone self-inflating bag. You inflate, deflate. This is the self-inflating, that you do not require any compressed oxygen source to inflate this bag, which is there in the anesthesia bag. Anesthesia bag are where you require a compressed oxygen source to inflate or deflate it. Now this is the body of the self-inflating bag. This is the place where you attach the oxygen, 100% oxygen, because the resuscitation is to be performed by 90 to 100% oxygen. Then this is the site where you attach the reservoir. I will just tell you the importance of the attaching the reservoir. Now this is the place which is the baby's end where you attach the mask, and this is the safety valve mechanism. Now the self-inflating bag has got a safety valve mechanism either in the form of a pop-up valve or the manometer, and the pressure at which it is set is the 40 millimeter of water. That's the pressure at which this is set. Sorry, 40 centimeter of water. Now this is how we see the functionality of the equipment, whether this is functioning or not. You put this mask at this end and see whether you get the impulse or not, whether the air which you are pushing from here, it is coming to the patient end or not. Second important thing is see that whether it is inflating or deflating quickly or not, and the safety mechanism is working or not. This is how you see. So if I press too hard, this will move out at a pressure of about 40 centimeter of water. Now the importance of the reservoir is that if we are not attaching, only the room air is entering, and this is the 100% oxygen, and when it goes to the patient end, what the child is receiving, 40% oxygen. Now if we attach the reservoir with this, the baby is going to receive 100% oxygen at this end. So reservoir can be of two types. This is the corrugated open-ended, or there can be a closed one, which you must have seen in your labor room. So these are the two reservoirs which one must have, and simultaneously we must use the correct size mask. And the mask, the type of the mask also, there are two types of the mask. One is the anatomical mask and the other is circular. These are the circular cushion mask which you are seeing in the different sizes. These are an anatomical one. We prefer not to use in the neonates. These are the most commonly used, and they should cover the chin. This is how I am showing you, please. The chin, mouth and the nose. This is the correct size of the mask which we use. If you see the other mask, this is the smaller one. This will cover the chin but not the nose. See here, the nose is not covered, and if it is a larger mask, that will cover the eyes of the baby, so which should not be used in this. So there are three types of the mask which are available of the different size babies. Now once we know that equipment is functional, which we have already checked what Dr. Prasad had described, then we will see the procedure how it is to be done. So in the equipment we have attached the oxygen source, we have attached the reservoir, we have used the correct size mask, and we are standing at the head end of the baby. Now please remember that for the initial steps the position may have changed. We have to always remember our position has to be the slight extension position. So at the head end you apply this mask with your thumb and the two fingers and hold it like this, firmly applying the pressure, and we give the positive pressure ventilation at a rate of around 40 to 60. So that rate which we give is, you say, squeeze 2, 3, squeeze 2, 3. So that's the, if you say in this way, let's start and see. Squeeze, and while deflating it is 2 and 3 you are saying. Squeeze 2 and 3. This gives a rate of approximately 40 to 60, and what you are observing is the lifting of the chest wall. How to see that you are giving the adequate pressure is that whether the, see this chest wall movement. Can we focus this?
It is showing.
Yeah. So this is what we are seeing, this chest is moving at a regular, and see there is no noise which is coming from the pop-off wall. It should be regular rate, squeeze 2, 3, squeeze 2, 3. This will give a rate of 40 to 60. Previously the people, they used to say that for 1 kg use thumb and 1 finger, or for 2 kg thumb and 2 fingers. But by this you cannot assess how much pressure you are giving. So only way by which you can assess is by seeing the chest wall liftment. So if the chest wall is lifting and the respiration is regular, that means we are opening up the alveoli and the baby will have soon the spontaneous breathing. Now if suppose you are not able to lift the chest wall, then probably we are not giving either enough pressure, or there are secretions in the airway, or the position is incorrect, or there is a leak in this seal, that which we are giving with the mask and the chin. So if there is a poor if we do not give the enough good pressure, or airway is blocked, or there is a leakage, then there will not be enough the chest wall rise. So you can redo that thing and see this how. Now by this 30 seconds of positive pressure ventilation, we hope to see that the baby will have a spontaneous respiration, and after this you assess the heart rate. Now heart rate counting has to be done for 6 seconds and multiplied by 10. So if the heart rate is 60, then our action will be different. If the heart rate is between 60 to 100, it will be a different action. Like if suppose the heart rate is more than 100 and you find the baby is improving, the respiratory rate is come, then gradually decrease the concentration of the oxygen, provide the free flow oxygen. Now you suddenly do not withdraw the oxygen by which we initially we were giving by the 100% oxygen. So if you find the heart rate is more than 100, gradually withdraw this and provide the oxygen by the free flow. So you can connect the oxygen, bring it near the baby, make a cup, or through the mask you can give this oxygen. If the heart rate is between 60 to 100, that's the time you again continue with the positive pressure ventilation, and if the heart rate is below 60, we will have to initiate the chest compression along with the positive pressure ventilation.
Okay, you pointed out about the chest compression. Dr. Jagdish, can you tell us how to do the chest compression and what are the indications when we will go for the chest compression?
I think when we have started the bag and mask ventilation, simultaneously we have seen the heart rate also, and as Dr. Chelani pointed out, counting for 6 seconds and multiplying quickly with 10, so we will get the heart rate per minute. And if it is less than 60, the external cardiac the chest compression need to be started, and for that we can put the thumb on one side and fingers in the
show it from this side actually. Yeah, I can show you. Can continue. So these are the techniques. We place the fingers below the chest and bring the thumb in front. This is the sight. Sight is the below the nipple. This is the line which you draw, and below this area is the nipple area. The area at which you do the chest compression. The other way to find out the area where you have to do the chest compression is roll your finger along the rib cage. You will come to the xiphisternum, and just above this area is the site at which you do the chest compression. Yeah, and the depth is the 1/3 of the AP diameter. So I can just see that I am doing it. So this is the 1/3 of the AP diameter.
Yeah, it's important because for a smaller baby or for a baby who is, say, good weight, the depth will vary, so it has to be according to the size of the baby's chest. 1/3 of the chest AP diameter is the sort of depth you have to create by chest compressions to be effective. I think, Dr. Chelani, it's very important to tell here that if the child is requiring chest compressions, that means 2 persons are required for the resuscitation.
Yeah.
Because practically it's not possible to do both the things effectively. Second thing is that the chest compression versus the bag and mask ventilation, the ratio has to be 3:1.
Yeah.
The 3 chest compressions, 1 ventilation, that synchrony has to be seen.
So we can see that synchrony, I mean what Dr. Jagdish has just described. So you will say that 1 and 2 and 3 and squeeze. So somebody who is giving at the positive pressure ventilation, so
If you can show that.
1 and 2 and 3, this way. 1 and, so 1 is when you are putting the pressure down, and is when the chest is coming up. So 1 and 2 and 3 and squeeze. So the person who is at the head and end will provide the positive pressure ventilation. So by this, and here instead of normal respiration which we are giving 40 to 60, here you are making it 30. So that 90 compression and 30 ventilations.
Yeah.
So that 120 events have to be done in 1 minute.
Okay, I think now you saw how to make the chest compression, and it is very important, as pointed out, that 3:1, that means 3 times chest compression and 1 time the respiration effort has to be done. By that we can make the Apgar score. First you have to see what is the Apgar score when the child was born, and after these interventions we have to monitor it. Can you tell us more about the Apgar score and how they will do it?
Okay, yeah. Once previously we were doing the Apgar scoring routinely, and of course Apgar scoring is done now also, But now one is realizing it that with these guidelines, as you must have seen now, that first 30 seconds are spent on the initial steps and next 30 seconds are spent on the positive pressure ventilation, and our APGAR score comes at 1 minute. So by 1 minute we have already initiated the resuscitation process. So APGAR score does not guide you about the type of the intervention which we are going to do it. But certainly if you see, out of these 5 components of the APGAR, 3 are already there which we are assessing in this when you do the assessment at birth. So those are taken care, and this APGAR score tells you about the long-term prognosis. It does not tell you about what action is to be done now, but certainly it is going to be useful if yes, APGAR at 5 minute or 10 minute is very low, then the prognosis is going to be bad. But if suppose a child who has cried immediately, everything is fine, and APGAR is at 5 minute is 8 or more, the prognosis is going to be good. So APGAR score does not tell you about the type of intervention, it only tells you about the long-term outcome. That's the, Dr. Jana, is the status.
Okay, so we have to perform the resuscitation starting from the very beginning, so that the first 1 minute is utilized very meaningfully.
Yes.
But when we do the resuscitation, you told that oxygen, 100% oxygen will be required.
Yeah, 90 to 100%.
Can we do it without oxygen? For example, in a village there may not be any oxygen facility. Can you do the resuscitation in that situation? Dr. Prasad, can you?
I think in the initial, when you asked me about the preparedness, at that time also I said that oxygen is desirable, but it is not a must. It is always better that we have oxygen cylinder or central oxygen supply where we can give 95 to 100% oxygen. But in a sub-center or in a primary health center, the oxygen cylinder may not be available. Remember that atmosphere also contains 23% oxygen. So there is no harm in resuscitating the child with the atmospheric air. So we can do it even without this oxygen supply also.
Yeah, in the recent guidelines, in fact, it has been said that the places where oxygen is not there, you can initiate the resuscitation with the room air and make sure that oxygen is provided, in the meantime. But now we have got sufficient data of, more than 5 to 6 years of those babies who have been ventilated on the room air, and the outcome has been found to be equally good. Idea is to inflate the chest wall. Now if we can open up the alveoli, the purpose is served.
Okay, is there any situation that we should not initiate active resuscitation, or it should be done in all the cases?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question which most of us they feel or get it in the labor rooms, that which are the babies who must receive the active resuscitation process. Shall I do this whole sequence of active resuscitation right from the initial steps, the positive pressure ventilation, the chest compression, the medication? If the time permits, we'll also talk about the medication, but just going to be specific on this question, that if suppose you find the baby's weight is below 450 gram or 500 gram and the baby's gestation is below 24 weeks and there is a trisomy 13, these are the babies, or there is a severe congenital malformations which are incompatible with life, like anencephaly. Now these are the cases, even if you do not do the active resuscitation, medico-legally you are safe. But in a situation, if suppose they are not there, then of course one has to initiate the active resuscitation, and one has to go through the full process of 10 to 15 minutes.
That means you mean it should be terminated after 10 to 15 minutes, or how do you decide that?
Yes, this is again a problem or area in the labor room. Now many times what happens that the baby is being resuscitated and one has done the whole sequence up to medication also, still we find the baby's respiration is poor, the heart rate is there. Now that's the common scenario which is available. I think in this situation you must take the family into confidence, discuss with them, see the availability of the respiratory support at your place. If you find the ventilatory support is available with you, shift these babies to the nursery. Discuss the prognosis with the parents that after 10-15 minutes of the active resuscitation, the respiratory effort has not come, the long-term sequelae will be not very good, and decision finally lies with the parents, because in these cases, even if you suppose put the baby on ventilator, the outcome is going to be very bad. So these situations have to be discussed, but one should start the resuscitation, go through the full process, take the family into confidence, and then one has to decide. Go up to full, do it for 10 to 15 minutes. That's the recommendation. Now, if the time permits, I think, Dr. Jana, we can take the points of the medication here. That in case we have done 30 seconds of the positive pressure ventilation and 30 seconds of chest compression, still you find the heart rate is below 60. That's the place where one has to bring the epinephrine, and it has to be given IV in a dilution of 1:10,000. And the previous guidelines, they mentioned that it can be given intratracheally, but nowadays it is said that first dose can be given intratracheally till the IV access is obtained, but the subsequent dose must be given through the IV, and this will improve the heart rate as well as the contractility of the muscles. Now, the second drug which one must take into account is many of these babies who are asphyxiated, they are also having the shock associated with them. So they will require normal saline in these cases, and give normal saline 10 to 15 ml per kg. It is to be given as soon as possible. Now, previously we used to have long list of the drugs in the labor room, the atropine, nicotinamide, the soda bicarb, which no longer is used. Soda bicarb has got no place in the labor room. It is to be given only when you are taking the baby in the neonatal unit and the baby has been having apneic for more than 5 minutes. You have given the positive pressure ventilation. Give it only with when the effective ventilation has been started. Otherwise, there will be accumulation of carbon dioxide. So there is no place of the soda bicarb in the labor room in the recent guidelines. The drug which is very important, and that is naloxone. Many of the mothers, those who are case of eclampsia, they are given morphine or pethidine, and if you find the baby who is apneic or having no spontaneous respiration, you have given the positive pressure ventilation, the heart rate has picked up, the color has picked up, it is pink, but what you find is the poor respiratory effort. And if the mother has received morphine or pethidine in the last 4 hours, then this is the time you should give the naloxone. If you give naloxone, you will find quickly there will be a response, the respiratory effort will come and the baby will respond to this. So this is the only 3 drugs which are maximally you can put it as soda bicarb in the neonatal unit, but inside the labor room we have got only place for epinephrine, the normal saline and the naloxone. So these are the minimum drugs.
Dr. Jagdish, will you like to add something?
Well, I would like Dr. Harish Chilani to tell what are the don'ts in this resuscitation, because that is something important. There are certain methods by which the compressions are done, the bag and mask. You said a couple of things. Maybe just to reiterate those towards the end.
I think the first most important thing is that comes under that unnecessarily suctioning, which you had also highlighted, Dr. Jagdish. That routine suctioning which previously used to be done, that should be avoided. Secondly, continued tactile stimulation should be avoided. One should initiate the positive pressure ventilation soon if you find that 30 seconds of the initial steps, and if you have provided the tactile stimulation twice, it has not initiated the response, then do not waste time in the tactile stimulation, initiate positive pressure ventilation. Then correct technique of the chest compression must be there, and also the correct use of the medication. And I think the most important what Dr. Prasad initially mentioned is that one should be physically present for each and every delivery. I think that is the key message. If person is available, and constantly these sessions on update, the CMEs are done on the neonatal resuscitation for all the personnel who are there in the labor room. I think it will be taking us to our common goal.
Dr.
And also institutional
delivery
delivery must be encouraged.
Encouraged. Yeah.
Dr. Prasad, will you like to give some tips, because this is the last teleconference. We have 30 seconds if you want to tell the students any message. And Dr. Prasad.
The examination point of view.
Well, first thing, Dr. Jaina has also told, I am reiterating that thing, that if you get a CNS case, central nervous system case, do not become nervous yourself. Be calm and quiet. Concentrate on the case. Present the case coolly, and you will get good marks. IMNCI cases, there are 2 cases from the IMNCI. I have already said that fill up the form correctly and consult the chart booklet before classifying. Consult the chart booklet before writing identify treatment. If you do these things honestly, you will get 100% marks. And IMNCI helps you in passing the examination. Examinations are not so difficult. It is practical examinations are very easy. Just your concentration, your coolness is required. If you do that thing, then passing is very easy.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Prasad. As I have already announced, our next teleconference will be on first Sunday of October from 11 AM to 1:45 PM. Please contact your regional director or your program in charge for filling up the torment theory form, because this time the form is different and you have to deposit 50 rupees for every course that you want to appear. I want to thank all the experts, all the viewers who are attending this teleconference. I thank Dr. Chelani, Dr. Prasad and Dr. Jagdish Chandra for being here, and the students who participated in the case presentations, and the viewers in the regional centers, the counselors, the regional center staff, and I thank all of you again. Please note that all the teleconferences are useful for the students. Please participate in future more, so that all the teleconferences will be more successful. Thank you, all of you.